So it was the day before Halloween, 2012, and I found myself standing alone at the Wounded Knee Massacre site on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the southwest corner of South Dakota. Sometime later, a car pulled up, and an old jewelry maker rolled down her window and said, "What brings you here?" And I smiled, I leaned in towards her, I extended my hand, and I said, "That is a great question." It was such a great question that it would take me 3 more years and 7 more trips to Pine Ridge before I knew the answer. All I knew at the time was that I was searching. I was searching for my voice in a place, ironically, where no one felt heard. Back home in Maine, I was and am the CEO of Hancock Lumber Company. Our company began doing business in 1848, the same decade Crazy Horse was born. And I'm part of the 6th generation of my tribe, my family, to work there. We grow trees, we manufacture lumber that we ship all over the world, and we retail lumber and building materials from our stores in Maine and New Hampshire with 458 people on our team. In 2007, the national housing and mortgage markets collapsed. Sales of homes in Maine would go on to fall by 66%. Hancock Lumber's sales would fall by 45%. In 2010, at the peak of the economic crisis, I began to have trouble speaking. When I went to talk, all the muscles in my throat would spasm and squeeze and contract, and my voice got very weak, broken, and difficult to hear or understand. And for me, it felt like it took a major athletic feat to push out just a few sentences. And it left me feeling sore and dizzy and out of breath and not wanting to talk. So I went to a doctor, and then another doctor, and I finally ended up at the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Clinic in Boston, where Dr. Song told me I had spasmodic dysphonia, a rare neurological disorder that affects only speech that I'd never heard of, with no known cause and no known cure. The primary treatment is a periodic Botox injection, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. So I found myself in 2010 trying to figure out how I might help lead a lumber company through the absolute collapse of a national housing market without the consistent or comfortable use of my voice. And I had no strategy or plan for what would happen next. So my instincts took over. And when instincts take over, things get very simple. When you can't talk, you listen. You get really, really good at listening. You get really good at asking questions. You get really good at answering a question with a question, sharing the stage, empowering others, and strengthening voices around you. And having now lived that way, I've come to believe that perhaps all CEOs should lose their voice for a time. By 2012, the economy had stabilized, and I could see that our company was well on its way to becoming strong again. And I had a growing feeling that it was time to pay a bit more attention to myself, to serve myself a bit more, to regain my balance, and to search for my voice. That summer, I was in an airport with my wife, Allison. I picked up a copy of National Geographic, and the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation was on the cover. And I read the article, I leaned over to my wife, and I said, I want to go there. I want to see what modern day life is like for the people that live there. And Allison said, you should do that. As if I'd said I was just running out for milk. But she said that because she knew, but she knew of my love of the American West and my love of American history, and particularly American history during the second half of the 19th century, when our nation's western expansion and manifest destiny ran into the Plains Indians. So I sent a few emails, and 60 days later, I was standing at the Wounded Knee Massacre site talking to an old jewelry maker. The Pine Ridge Indian Reservation is perhaps the most remote, most historic, most disenfranchised of all the Sioux reservations on the Northern Plains. It's home to the Oglala Sioux tribe, and they are the direct descendants of some of the most famous war chiefs and medicine men in American history. Red Cloud, Crazy Horse, Black Elk, and others. And the more time I spent there, and the more I came to know their story, the more it stopped me in my tracks, made me feel numb for a time, actually, to realize that there were communities in this country that had still not yet recovered from the winning of the West. What's more, there were communities in this country that had not yet recovered from Columbus discovering a new world. And in their story, I came to believe or feel that I could see a universal human story unfolding in the extreme example that was Pine Ridge. And that story is this. Before the coming of the Wasichu, the Lakota term for white men, before the discovery of the gold, which the Lakota call the yellow metal that makes the white men crazy, before the making and breaking of treaties, before the creation of the res, when the Lakota were strong and free and traveled where they pleased, virtually all the power in their society went to the individual. And the center, the governing bureaucratic center, was small, almost impossible to find. After the conquest, after the colonization, after the genocide, after the remaking of Indians as whites, when the Lakota were sequestered on their reservations, the power that used to belong to the individual had been beaten down, had been stolen, taken, and the power now lived with the center, the governing bureaucratic center. Power now lived with the Great Father in Washington, with the War Department, and then the Department of the Interior, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Lakota have seven sacred rights that were brought to them long ago, before the coming of the horses, by the white buffalo calf woman. And one of those rites is the vision quest. In the vision quest rite, young men coming of age or adults at a transformational moment in their lives would leave their tribe and journey out into the wilderness alone. And the concept was that by seeking to gain a deeper understanding of one's individual connection with all living things and with the Great Spirit, that we could also gain a deeper insight into the whisper of our own soul, that which makes you you, special, powerful, inspired. And then you were expected to return to your tribe, share the vision that you had received, and live your life in accordance with that message. And the concept was simple. The concept was that if every individual was living the truth of their own voice, was knowing their own personal truth and strength, that the tribe would be strong. It was right out of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. The strength of the pack is the wolf. So for me, now it was time for what Joseph Campbell called the return. It was time to go home, share what I felt I had learned, and to try to integrate it. And I chose to do that in 3 ways. First, for the people of Pine Ridge, I made a commitment, whatever commitment I could, to help be a part of the resurrection of a once strong, proud voice. So I started a nonprofit called The Seventh Power that does work at Pine Ridge. I wrote a book and published it about my experiences there. But most importantly, I just made a commitment to stay connected. At Hancock Lumber, the opportunity was simple. What if we could create an organization where everybody led, where every voice felt heard, respected, valued, trusted, and empowered? Wouldn't an organization where everybody led outperform just an organization where just a few people held all the power? So we went about setting up a series of systems designed to push as much power out from the center as possible into the hearts and hands of each individual. Surveys, focus groups, huddles, and more. And it could well just be a coincidence, a total coincidence. But in the years that followed, our company went on to set records in pretty much every statistical category we measure. And we twice became a best place to work in Maine, which is a very difficult award to receive. And in a state full of trees, we were the only forest products company on the list. And then finally, and most importantly, I made a lifetime commitment to continue to listen to the whispers of my own soul. For I had already seen that the more I served myself, the more valuable I became to others. And in a twist of irony this way, that being selfish was selfless. So an invitation, because I've come to see that what I'm trying to do is not particularly special or complicated or unique to me, that anyone and everyone can do it. You don't need to acquire a rare neurological voice disorder to stop and listen to the whispers of your own soul. You don't need to be the CEO of a corporation to find meaningful, powerful ways to strengthen the voices of others. And you don't need to wait for anybody else. You don't need anybody else to go first. Because as the Lakota knew long ago, tribes are made strong one individual at a time. So as they say at Pine Ridge, Wopila Tonka, big thanks.